Chapter 3, As It Will Please Mr. 3 seconds before the arrival of the letter of J.B. Hobson, I did not think more to pursue the unicorn than to attempt the passage of the North of West. 3 seconds after reading the letter of the Honorable Secretary of the Navy, I finally understood that my true vocation, the sole purpose of my life, was to chase this worrying monster, and in purge the world. However, I had returned from a tired trip hungry for rest. I only aspired to see my country again, my friends, my the house of the garden of plants, my dear and precious collections, but nothing could hold me. I forgot any tiredness friend collection, and I accepted without further reflection the offer of the American government. Moreover, thought any road that brought back to Europe, and the unicorn will be kind enough to train me towards the coasts of France. This worthy animal will be caught in the seas of Europe for my personal pleasure, and I cannot bring less than half a meter of its ivory baggage to the Museum of Natural History. But in the meantime, I had to search for this narwhal in the north of the Pacific Ocean, which, to return to France, was taking the path of the Antipodes Council Criege, with an impatient voice advice. I was my domestic one, devoted, who accompanied me in all my travels, a brave Flemish, whom I loved and who made me well, a phlegmatic being, by nature regular by principle, zealous by habit, surprisingly little of the surprises of life, very right, of his hand suitable for any service, and in spite of his name never giving advice, even when not asked to rub himself with the soap of our little world of the garden of plants advised, had come to know something in him. I had a favorite, specialist on classification in natural history, traveling with an agility of acrobat, all the scale of the branches of the groups of classes, of subclasses, orders of the families of the genera of the sub-people of the species, and varieties, but his science stopped there. Rank. It was his life, and he did not know much about it in classification theory. Little in practice, it is not distinguishable. I believe a sperm whale from a whale, and yet what brave and worthy boy! Advice until now, and for 10 years, had followed me everywhere. Trained science, never a reflection of him on the length or fatigue of a journey. No objection to closing his suitcase for any country in us Congo so far that he went there as here withouten, the most impassive in the world that she is. Say advice, screams a third time. Advice appeared. Gentleman calls me. He says, entering, Yes, my boy, prepare you, we leave in 2 hours, as he will like. Mr. quietly replied to the council, Not a moment to lose. Certainly, in my evil, all my travel utensils of the clothes, of the shirts, of the socks, without counting, but the most you can, and to you, and the collections of Mr. Fit observed advice. We will deal later what the Archaeotherium, the Arachotarium, Priodons, the Gyropotamus, and other carcasses of Mr. On will keep them at the hotel, and the living baby Rusa of Mr. We will feed him during our absence. Besides, I will give the order to send us to France, our menagerie. We do not return to Paris. His advice certainly answered evasively, but by doing a hook that will please him, it will be few things a little less direct way here. We take not this on the Abraham Lincoln as it will suit Mr. quietly, answered advice. You know, my friend, it is the monster of the famous Narvel. We will purge the seas. The author of an in-quarto book in 2 volumes on the rivers of the deep underwater cannot dispense to embark, and with the commander Farragut, mission glorious but dangerous. Also, we do not know where we go. It is silly. There can be very capricious. But we will go anyway. We have a commander who is not cold to the eyes, like, Will, sir, I will answer advice. And his eyes say, I say well because I do not want to hide anything. It is here one of his trips which we do not always return. As it will please. A quarter of an hour after our mails were ready advice had done. We have a hand, and I was sure that nothing was missing. because this boy clothes classified the shirts and the as well as birds or mammals. The elevator of the hotel dropped us to the large vestibule of the basement. I went down the few steps that led to the ground floor. I paid my bill at this vast counter, always besieged by a considerable crowd. I gave the order to ship to Paris, France, but bundle of stuffed animals and dried plants. I thighs opened a sufficient credit to the Babirusa, and advice I followed me. I jumped in a car, the vehicle at 20 francs, the race went down Broadway to Union Square, followed for its arrival to its junction with Boris Street Price, Catherine Street. Stopped at the 34th foot there, the Catherine ferry boat transported us man, horses, and car to Brooklyn, the great annex of New York, located on the left bank of the River of the East, and in a few minutes we arrived or near which Abraham Lincoln vomited by these two chimneys of torrents of black smoke. Our luggage were immediately transhipped on the bridge of the frigate. I rushed on board. I asked the commander Farragut. One of the sailors led me on the dunette where I was, in the presence of a badman officer who reached my hand. Answer, Commander Farragut. In person welcome, Professor. Your cabin awaits you. I was greeting and leaving the commander to take care of his equipment. I trust to drive to the cabin, which destined the slab. Lincoln had been perfectly chosen and fitted for its new destination. It was a big brand frigate equipped with superheaters that allowed to bring to 7 atmosphere the tension of its steam. Under this pressure, the slab Lincoln reached an average speed of 18 miles. It is 3/10 an hour, considerable speed, but however insufficient to fight with the gigantic. It is enough the interior fittings of the frigate responded to its nautical qualities. I was very satisfied with my cabin, located at the rear, which opened on the square of the officers. We will be well here. I tell to counsel as well one of the pleasures to Mr. replied advice, that a Bernard hermit in the shell of a log. I advised them properly. Our mails, and I was going back on the deck to follow the preparations of the sailing. At that time, the Commander Farragut's maid dropped the last moorings, which held the Abraham Lincoln at the worst of Brooklyn. Thus, a quarter of an hour late, myself and the frigate on the ground without me, and I missed this extraordinary supernatural expedition, a real like whose true account may well find some disbelievers. But the Commander Farragut did not want to waste neither a day nor an hour to rally the seas in which the animal had just been signaled, that he brought his engineer. Are we in pressure? Asked him. Yes, yes, he answered the engineer. Shouted the commander. Farragut's quite twists, which was transmitted to the machine by means of compressed air devices. The mechanics made the wheel of the trainwork the steam whiz by rushing into the drawers between the long horizontal pistons and pushed the connecting rods of the tree. The branches of the propeller build the waves with increasing speed, and the Abraham Lincoln knew his majestically in the midst of 100 ferry boats and tenders, loaded with spectators that made him parade the docks of Brooklyn and all the part of New York that border the East River. Discovered curious 3 cheers starting from 500, 0 breaths, successively burst thousands of Sagittarian tissues above the compact mass, and it gave him the Abraham Lincoln until his arrival in the waters of Ludson at the tip of this elongated peninsula which forms the city of New York. Then the next frigate on the side of New Jersey, the admirable right bank of the river full of villa, passed between the forts, which greeted it with their biggest cannon, the slab. Lincoln responded by bringing and in 3 times the American pavilion, whose 39 stars resplendent to its horn of Artemont, then modifying its march to take the marked channel which rounded in the inner bay, formed by the point of Sandy Hook, he shaved this sandy tongue, or a few thousand spectators. He acclaimed the boat procession once again, and tenders always followed the frigate, and he left it only at the height of the lightbot, whose 2 lights mark the entrance to the New York passes. 3 hours rang, the pilot descended into his canoe and joined the small schooner waiting for him in the wind. The fires were pushed. The Lilies built the frigate faster along the yellow and low coast of Long Island, and at 8 p.m., after losing the fires of Fay Island in the northwest, it ran full steam on the dark waters of Long Island, the Atlantic